Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our weekly Business Success Podcast, sponsored by the Time to Play Foundation. Time to Play is a 501c3 not-for-profit with a mission and purpose to enrich the lives of others through programs, public awareness, outreach activities, events, and learning opportunities that further the concept of enjoying life. You can check out timetoplay.com in order to find many areas in which you can learn to better enjoy your life. Have a healthy life, have a happy life, as well as achieving work-life balance. My name is Jerry Siegel. My company is JASB Management. I'm in the business of management training and development, and I host these podcasts weekly. Today we're going to be talking about the question of whether you are the business, or is your business the business. And we have to help us Lee Munch, who's a business coach. Lee, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. Thanks, Jerry. Glad to be here again. My company is Monarch 13, and it's my mission to positively and profitably impact 13,800 small businesses by December 31st, 2017. And the reason why that's my mission is because I feel that the small business person often is the one who fits into this category that we're talking about today. Are you the business, or is the business the business? It's they get so caught up in it. And through my 5-step system, I guide my clients from the chaos to control so they too can have ultimately the freedom they want and enjoy their life.
Well, thank you, and certainly the point that you made is critical, because it's very easy for the entrepreneur to try to do everything him or herself, and that is not the way to lead to a successful business. So, Lee, why don't you start us off today in regards to today's topic and where you think the entrepreneur needs to go.
Hi, Jerry. Absolutely. So, as I said, I make it a habit of interviewing business owners, small business owners, and of course by small business I'm referring to less than 50, less than 20 employees, which is really the bulk of most businesses. And the one thing, and particularly lately I've been focusing, not lately, but I've been focusing more on the baby boomers, because there's a lot of us, I'm one included. There's a lot of us out there, and all of a sudden we're trying to think what's next. We've had our business for however many longs we've had it. Now we're thinking about what's next. And oftentimes I'll go into the business, I'm sure you've even seen this when you've gone in there, is that they say, okay, I'm ready to move on. And number one, so I go in and I look at the business. Well, what do you want to do? They're not really sure what they want to do. There's pretty much three, maybe 4 options with that, right? I mean, they can sell the business. They can have someone come in and run the business for them. They can, shut the door, walk away, and then possibly change the business model so they can have more of a retirement lifestyle. And then when we look closer at where they are right now, they're nowhere near ready to go, because there is no option other than pretty much, and I've had many, many clients come to me saying, Lee, I'm just going to have to shut my door. I've got some assets, I got equipment, I got whatever I have, but I'm going to have to shut my door. But it doesn't have to be that way.
One of the things that we've touched
on.
One of the things we've touched on, Lee, and certainly what you're speaking of here, is the need for planning, the need for preparing where you want to be, where you want to go, and to decide and determine the steps that you need to get there. And one of the main reasons that people are talking about, as I hear you say, shutting the door, is that they were not planning for the future.
Right. That's true, but it's even more than that. What they really haven't realized is that they are, in fact, the business. They have these grand ideas of what they think their business is worth, But if that business owner steps out of the business, you can have a team of 20 people, you can have it's 50 people, but if that business owner, first of all, the business owner cannot step out of the business. Now, I'm not saying that they really cannot. Sometimes they can't remove themselves, and they get, as we were talking before, they get too busy trying to do everything or manage everything, which doesn't work. So they have to get to the place with planning. Of course, is important, but they also need to get to the place where they are allowing the business to run itself and have the people in key areas and focus on those things that are going to make them better. Because only when you can literally, as I say, go away for a year and the business is going to be up and running just fine as a business owner, do you really have something that you can even contemplate different options.
Very truly, but how often or how infrequently do you see something like that existing, especially with a small business? Because businesses that are, as I hear you say, less than 50 employees, typically are controlled to a large extent by the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur has not delegated enough. The entrepreneur has not empowered his or her people, and therefore the business is really not able to run successfully for any length of time without that individual.
Exactly. So what we do is I have a 5-step system that I work with all my clients and all different levels to get them through. And what we look at is we look at where they are now, the reality of where they are now, the real reality of where they are now. And once we kind of get through that and they understand, we say, well, where does this need to be, and what do you need to get from this in order for you to make a decision? You know, once you have and then we create the plan, and that's the planning that we do. So just to get them where they can then make the decision of what they really want to do. But it takes time. It takes time, and it takes a lot of self-control from the business owner. And I always say this is my big thing. It's like, business owners, small business owners, our businesses are like our children. And we can't really be objective about our own children. I said, and the problem is that when we have children, by law, they at least need to go to kindergarten, and most of them have to get on that bus and go to school. But with our businesses, we don't have to do that. We don't ever have to let them go on the bus or even out the door for that matter. And I think that's where we get caught up, because we think that nobody knows our business or nobody can do as well as we can in our business. And it's getting out of that mindset, first of all. Mindset's really at the crux of a lot of it, is getting out of that mindset and then understanding the benefits that they will have, and getting them to really understand their benefits of what they can do. And not only that, but we're assuming that all these are wonderful businesses and they solve wonderful problems and they make people's lives better. And it doesn't matter if it's a storefront or it doesn't matter. We're all here helping. We as human beings are trying to help somebody solve a problem with any kind of business we have, whether it's a deli and you're solving a problem of hunger, or an attorney, or anything. So when we realize that we get them to the place where they can begin to see how much more they can do, it helps. But it doesn't happen overnight. And quite frankly, particularly for someone who's been in business, and a lot of my clients have been in business at least 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 years, they didn't get to where they are overnight. So you cannot believe that there are no magic pills, and there are no instant solutions. And it's just taking it bite after bite and focusing and prioritizing and putting that plan into place that then allows them to begin to step back, and also making sure that everything is running consistently and making sure that there is enough money in the business so that when someone can come in and then you can make a decision and say you want to sell it, you have something to sell and your business becomes an asset.
Well, the analogy that you make, Lee, is certainly appropriate, because frequently business owners believe that they are the only person in the organization who can take on a particular responsibility. So that's one of many that will then fall on their shoulders. When that structure exists, with that individual being the only one that needs to do things, the business is extremely limited in their ability to grow and also to prosper, because there's only a certain amount of time, and regardless of the capabilities of the individual, he or she can only do so much. We have another caller on the line today, Gina Lollo, who happens to be an entrepreneur herself, is on the line, and I want to ask her to introduce herself and also to provide some input based on what she's heard so far. Gina?
Hi, good afternoon, Jerry. Good afternoon, Lee.
Hey, Gina.
How you doing?
Good.
My name is Gina Lollo. I am a newly established broker in the real estate world, and I am an entrepreneur and a business owner. And I find what Lee has to say very, very, very enlightening and very important, because I do think that we get wrapped up in our day-to-day running the business that we don't think for the future in the way that we probably should. So, what Lee is saying with that preparation, with that thinking of, eventually, is this business going to run without me? I think that we should probably look at that a lot more than we actually do. Again, we get, trapped in our day-to-day, and we kind of, just go along thinking about what we're going to do, for the business and with the business, but we don't really think about the end game. And so I think that's very important, that you provide services to businesses to allow them to think that way, because I think everyone needs a helping hand with that. So thank you, Lee, for what you do.
Very, very definitely in that regard, and in fact, the eventual outcome as to what's going to happen with the business is something that really needs to be planned from day one. Although it may change as time goes on, there needs to be some thought by that business owner as to what is going to happen somewhere down the road. And
right.
By taking time to work on your business, you have an opportunity to determine where you're going to go, what you want to do, and what you expect to become, as opposed to spending the entire time working in the business.
Exactly, yeah, and planning is important. I always say, like, when I walk into, and this is putting it very, very, simply, it's like I walk in, I'll say to somebody, okay, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Tokyo? We're in New York, right? Do you want to go to Tokyo or do you want to go to Greece? And I said, and they don't really think about it, or else they'll think that they want to go to Tokyo, but they're heading east. Well, it's going to take them a lot longer to get to Tokyo if they head east. Well, I guess that's not really a really good example, but or like California or Greece, it's like you're going to take a lot longer to get there. So just understanding that's where you want to go, and even if it's not the end all, and I think that we start ideally, because you got to think ideally, because nobody really knows what the future holds. But if you start from an ideal place, that's also something that you can really, then go back to, because it goes back to your dream and it goes back to your why.
Yes, and again, then you have at least made some determination as to what's going to be, even though you are, to a large extent, guessing, and you're making a best option. You at least have something you can shoot for. You have a goal, and you
right.
have a target. And the only way you can hit a target is to have one.
Exactly. And I find that, and I guess a lot of this goes through, you used the word before, structure. They have the structure where the business owner kind of feels like they have to do everything. And the reason why they have, it's what they really need is real structure of the organization, yes. A consistent structure, because I'm sure all of us, we come across those, they just pretty much, and I'm talking, very, very successful businesses, they shoot from the hip. Instead of, again, lack of planning, lack of direction, lack of prioritization, they just shoot from the hip. Lack of tracking and knowledge.
there's no procedures, there's no process, and if there are procedures, they're not written and specific. They're in somebody's head, and that's not the place that they need to be. They need to be down on paper, and they need to be followed diligently by everyone in the business. They also need to be able to be changed consistently and continually, because things are going to change, which requires revision in those procedures, in those processes, in those systems. But the more systematically an organization is put together, the better able it will be to run. And it won't need the knowledge that may be in somebody's head, because everything that's down on paper can easily be followed by anybody, whether they are working in the business for a week or a month or years. But that requires time and effort and energy to do those things. And that requires the ability to step back, to plan, and to prepare. And we've touched on that in previous podcasts, the idea of being able to decide what it is that you want and exactly where you want to go, where you want to take the business. We've touched on preparing. We've touched on the fact that the business owner or entrepreneur is a salesperson first, whether you want to go by yourself or you want partners in the business. We've touched on self-management, the idea of using outside resources and managing your money as well as your time, understanding failure, understanding risk. We have touched on many of the key components for business success. And again, for anybody that is listening to this podcast, either currently live or subsequently on Blog to Talk Radio, we encourage you to send to us any thoughts you may have, anything that you want us to discuss in these podcasts. You can email timetoplay.com, and you can just refer to the questions that you may like to have answered. We're going to be starting to interview some business owners in the coming weeks to ask them some questions as to how they got started and the challenges they faced, the outside resources that they've used and why and how what they've learned from making mistakes. But the eventual objective of these podcasts is to help people have a greater opportunity of succeeding in business. And as Lee has said, and as we've repeated frequently, it's never easy. It's never easy. It's never overnight. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes energy. And being able to withstand all the obstacles, all the roadblocks, all the setbacks that are going to occur, because they always do. And regardless of how you envision things, problems or challenges and issues are going to arise, and they need to be addressed at that point in time. The entrepreneur needs to understand that, and they need to be able to withstand those difficulties that are inevitable. So with that in mind, Lee, please talk some more about whether the business is the business or the individual is the business.
Well, again, it just boils down to if something happens to the business owner, whether of their choosing or, unfortunately, this usually comes into play when something happens, like somebody gets sick or somebody gets hurt or there's something that takes them away from their business, and they can see, and then they're forced to either see how things run or don't run. But it's so much better to be able to do this. It's, as you were saying, things. a lot of business owners and a lot of entrepreneurs, we shy away from words like systems and structures and process and procedures because they sound really, really boring and they sound really, not what we like to do. I think most of us at our heart are creative and want to help and serve and be creative, and all that other stuff sounds either too corporate or whatever, or it sounds just, it's not fun. And it's just understanding that these things exist in your business in some way, shape, or form. It's either by being reactive, and in probably chaotic manners, or it's taking proactive and being in control as best as you can. But it has to be done in such a way that it's embracing. I see also another thing that a lot of business owners, they don't delegate, they abdicate. And then what happens is they abdicate, and then when things don't go right, they blame. And they're putting out fires, and they're doing all these things. So true delegation requires real inspiring and enrolling your team. So they need to figure out how to do that and be their leader. As you also mentioned, that you do put things into place. You can make it a game. I have all sorts of exercises that I do with companies where we create basically their operations manual together, and each person has their part in it, so they all feel that they're important and they've contributed to it. And then you look at it, and these should be, as you said, they should be fluid because things change, markets change, business change, opportunities change. So it's got to be fluid and upgraded. I'm also a big believer because sometimes it's a lot easier, but, all of our cameras, our phones, whatever right now, all have videos, cameras on there. You can do some documentation writing, but you can also just do a video on the different steps that have to go. It's a lot quicker and easier, and it's easier to be fluid, and that's just another way. So it's just trying how to make these things more fun and understanding the benefit of having certain things in place so that you can then focus on the benefit.
Certainly, those points are very, very much on target, Lee. And whether it's using a video or whether it's putting it down on paper in writing, at least the procedure or the process is there for people to see and understand and be able to follow, as opposed to, as you mentioned before, shooting from the hip or guessing as to what needs to be done. Because every business has a number of areas that can be handled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E, regardless of what business they're in, whether they are in retail, whether they're in wholesale, whether in manufacturing or distribution or professional services. There are many of the areas of the business, of all those businesses, that are identical, and the nature of the business is such that factors that are identical can be handled in a structured way, and that can be done the same today as it was yesterday as it will be tomorrow.
Exactly.
Even though somewhere down the road it's going to be need modification because things will change and therefore upset it. But
yeah, to your point, Jerry, you know what? 80% of everything that occurs in any business, in any industry, is a process.
Correct.
So if you take care of the 80% that is a process, then that gives you more time to focus on the 20% that's not. And again, it could be a daily process, it could be an annual process, it could be a process that's biannual. It doesn't matter. It's still a process.
Well, and in that same vein, Lee, I've learned that roughly 75-80% of all businesses are identical.
Right.
Because they are faced with the same areas that they need to focus on. Everybody has clients or customers. Everybody needs communication. Everybody needs goals. Leadership is certainly extremely important. Organizations need a mission, a vision, a purpose. They need supervision. They need payroll. They need human resources. They need time management. And we could go on and on, regardless of the nature of what somebody is doing or what somebody is trying to provide to their clients or customers, all those areas are identical. And all those areas can be better handled with systems, with set procedures, with processes. So even though we've spoken about this frequently in today's podcast, it's something that cannot be overemphasized because, again, succeeding in business is so challenging. Gina, any words that you might want to add?
No, I'm actually intrigued by what everyone is actually saying here today because, again, when we're doing these podcasts, we are trying to help other businesses, and I think in turn, in trying to help other businesses, we also are helping ourselves to grow and to gather more knowledge about, how it is we move forward in business in a successful way. So I think it's very intriguing for the entrepreneurs or the business owners and those that are helping businesses grow. I think it's a collaboration of all efforts, and I think it helps everyone grow. And I guess that's the philosophy of Time to Play. To grow, to live, to have a balance, and I think that balance is important. I agree with everything that everyone is saying here today, and I think that these podcasts are truly important. Ongoing. I think they serve as a reminder of things that we may forget, again, through our day-to-day, unfortunately sometimes putting out fires, to hopefully, learn a better way, an easier way, a more delegated way, as we have said, of getting things done. So I think that's important.
Definitely, and again, in regards to putting out fires, which are going to occur in every organization from time to time, one of the keys is to remembering that after the fire is extinguished, which needs to be addressed immediately or as quickly as possible, obviously, there needs to be a time where the leader or the leaders need to step back and sit down and talk about why the fire occurred and how they can avoid future fires. And frequently what they may find is that there may be an employee who was an arsonist, there may be an employee who was a firefighter, and sometimes the same employee is doing both, filling both roles so that he or she can be looked at as a hero based on, look at what I did. And really what they did was start the fire and then extinguish it. So unfortunately, that happens all too often in organizations because people do things from a psychological perspective, and it is important to understand and know the psychology, but that can't be done too often because for almost every situation, the business owner or the business leaders are not psychologists. However, they must remember that anybody who's running a business is in the psychology business because they're working with people, they're working with human beings. So I emphasize the need to take a look at the fires after they're extinguished.
No, absolutely, Jerry. And I just want to add that it's funny that you say we're all in the psychology business because we really truly are. And I happen to have my master's degree in psychology, and I feel that I use that degree so much in my day-to-day business. And I think it's so important to understand, the psychology behind what is happening and why it is happening. So that's really important. That rings home with me. So.
Yeah, and I think, and as leaders, is understanding and how to use it because it comes out with communication between themselves and their team, and oftentimes the owners do not have enough interaction or open communication with their staff. They do
Correct.
a 1-year annual review. With my work with my clients, we do not have annual reviews. We have quarterly reviews because it's a lot easier to right a ship after after a month or a couple months and having the things in place so the ship doesn't go off course very far anyway. Then it is sit down once a year and decide what happened and what didn't happen. So it's just having all these protocols in place so that Everybody knows, everybody's on the same page. And then it makes it, and what's expected and not expected, and then it makes it a lot easier. And also understanding how people need to process information, which is, again, psychology, because some people need to have visuals, some people need to hear, some people need to, feel things, and how to incorporate all that so that everybody gets what they need. It's not as hard as it seems, and it's not an impossible task, but it does take a commitment to trying to do that.
Right.
Very definitely, because people want to know how they're doing. People want that feedback continually and consistently, and the leaders need to provide it to them, because otherwise they're leaving it in the basis of guessing what they're doing or what they're not doing. They don't know whether what they're doing is proper or improper unless they get feedback. Now, we've touched on the fact that there's no such thing as constructive criticism, but feedback does not have to be critical. Feedback can be coming from a positive perspective, trying to help somebody learn and understand what they need to do and how they need to do it differently the next time.
Exactly.
We're all going to make mistakes. It's part of the process. And we want to learn from those mistakes. We want to use those simply as opportunities to learn and not make the same mistake again and again and again. Let me ask if there's any more key thoughts for today's podcast before we start to wrap up. Gina, Lee, any other thoughts you want to add?
I guess one final note would be on this same note that we're just finishing here is that, and like what I do with all my clients, is that everyone needs to be part of the planning process. And as you said, everyone needs to have goals, but that comes from the top. So the more you do this, the more you bring in the people, bring in your team to help you really grow your business, and they understand your cog. They're the cog in the wheel, right? They understand their place of not only now, but in the future, what their place could look like. These are all very important things that allows them, the people, they need to be empowered to be, your team and your staff, your team, whatever you want to call them. I prefer team because that's really what they should be like. You're the coach and they're the team. The more they can be part of these processes and understand where they're going, and therefore become more empowered, then the easier it's going to be for the business owner to begin to step back and let that business start running itself almost.
Yes, and that requires letting go, which is a difficult behavior from many business owners and business leaders, because they know that when they control something, it will be done in their way, and in their mind, their way is the best way. That may be, but it may not be, and typically two heads are better than one. So by allowing your people to help you in your business, it is a much better way to run the business, in addition to having the ability to allow the people to feel as if they are part of the business, which they certainly are, because without your people, there is no business. People are the greatest asset to any organization.
So they'll have a much more vested interest in the success of the overall business if they feel that they were part of the process.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% correct. So I agree with that.
Definitely. So with that said, let me thank Lee, let me thank Gina for their contributions today, and once again, let me thank anybody listening now or in the future to these weekly business success podcasts, which are designed to help you enjoy and experience success in your business. And once again, please remember that we are looking for feedback, we are looking for questions, we are looking for comments. You can email timetoplay.com with thoughts, with ideas, with suggestions, and with questions that you might like us to address in a future podcast. Certainly are very welcome, because these are designed for you, the listener. These are designed to help people in order to have them be able to be healthy, happy, have work-life balance, and experience success. So I thank you. I wish you a good afternoon, and we will be back on the air next Tuesday at noon.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay.
Bye, Gina.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.